Time now for Media Watch here on France 24, for which I'm joined by James Creed. And hi, James.
Chris.
You've been trawling, as ever, the internet and the papers for the very best reaction to the biggest stories. Starting off with Barack Obama in the form of an empty chair, according to Clint Eastwood.
That's right. I think we have some pictures of this one. It was one of the more odd moments of yesterday evening down in Tampa, where Clint Eastwood got creative and he started speaking to an empty chair next to him. Now, the thing is, if he'd been very sharp and snappy about what he said, it might have worked. But he was a little bit stuttering and slow, and he is, 82 years of age, and I think he came across looking a little bit like he wasn't really sure what he was saying. It didn't work, basically. Let's take a listen to an extract of Clint addressing the chair.
So, Mr. President, how do you handle promises that you made when you were running for election, and how do you handle it? I mean, what do you say to people? Do you just I know people were wondering. You don't have it. What do you mean? Shut up.
Right. So that one kind of went bit of a fail.
A tumbleweed scenario.
A tumbleweed scenario in typical Western style as well for Clint. Let's take a look at some of the reactions online. Clint Eastwood's bizarre invisible Obama speech baffles and wows Republicans. The Republicans liked it. The rest of the country thought it was a bit strange. This is the New Yorker. Raving Clint spoils Romney's big night, because the thing was, Mitt Romney spoke later on. But as we see here, this is on Topsy.com, where they chart online talk. Now, there was a hashtag on Twitter called Eastwooding, #Eastwooding, and that rapidly, or kind of rather dramatically, overtook any discussion of Mitt Romney, #Mitt Romney there in the blue. So it actually overshadowed Mitt Romney's speech, even though it was meant to just warm him up. Clint Eastwood and his imaginary non-friend at the convention, this is in the LA Times, they say the actor's conversation with an invisible President Obama may go down in history as the strangest televised moment in convention history. You had photos like this online, kind of just people getting creative about looking at an empty chair. A Twitter address called The Invisible Chair, where you have people, imagining what the chair might say. And Obama, of course, who's very savvy when it comes to social media, he had this photo taken of him sitting in a chair saying this seat is actually taken. And other people coming out with some funny stuff. Clint Eastwood is now backstage arguing with a vending machine. So general sort of
The internet
inanimate.
has clearly decided that Clint Eastwood is the unforgiven. Let's move swiftly on now to Princess Diana, 15 years since her death here in Paris, and being remembered on the internet.
Now, what I spotted online today was a kind of a slight contrast between coverage in some of the French media where, the emotional sort of in-the-moment stuff has passed, it's 15 years down the line, and some are being kind of a little bit quite brutal, actually. Manipulative, narcissistic, unstable, the hidden face of Princess Diana. And they talk about how, 15 years on, we're a little bit less sort of in the emotion of it all. But if you go on Twitter and if you look at #Diana, it is, I would say, almost unanimously positive about the late princess, and people reminiscing actually on where they were and what they were doing 15 years ago. It was, I suppose, a pretty big shock moment in news, and I think most people can remember where they were when they heard that, so people recalling that.
Okay, Mohamed Morsi, the Egyptian president, has been in Iran. His words, they're very closely watched, and on one front at least, he's apparently the victim of mistranslation.
That's right, this is rather odd. Several media are focusing on, one sec, I'll just pull up the actual page, which seems to have somehow disappeared, which is unfortunate.
Censorship.
Okay,
it's
gone missing. It's gone missing. In any case, what happened was it was in Tehran, and Mohamed Morsi was there. He's the new Egyptian president. He was attending the non-aligned summit, and his official translation on Iranian television was completely misrepresented. He mentioned intervention in Syria. On a number of occasions, this would not have pleased the Iranians who are against that. And for Syria, Bahrain was substituted in on no less than 3 occasions, according to one media analyst who spoke to Al Arabiya television. That is just not acceptable, really, is it? So, yes, that was rather unfortunate. And I've actually rather fortunately, speaking of luck, found the webpage there. There you go. And that is a photo of them in Tehran. So there you go.
Okay, we talk about Clint Eastwood's The Unforgiven at the top of this. It seems Dominic Strauss-Kahn is now also The Unforgiven.
Also, certainly Unforgiven now. This came out...
Finally, some people
Finally,
say.
Unforgiven. This came out in the Le Parisien this morning. It has been picked up by the papers around the world. Anne Sinclair confirms she has separated from Dominic Strauss-Kahn. I suppose one of the more surprising aspects of that whole drama was her loyalty to her man after... on several scandals, one after the other, of relating to infidelity, I suppose, to say the least. Anne Sinclair, je vais très bien, merci. I'm doing very well, thank you. Now, this was an interview she gave. She is, of course, now the managing editor of Huffington Post, the French edition, and she's looking very cheerful in that photo there. And this was an interview for what the French call la rentrée, when everybody gets back to work after the August holidays. The very last question in this interview was, how are you doing in your personal life since your separation with Dominique Strauss-Kahn? Now, what's interesting about that is neither party had confirmed that separation until this question was posed by a journalist, one would imagine, after having asked her if he could pose the question this way. And oddly, she said, j'ai bonne mine, I'm looking great. Right? I've had holidays and I'm doing fine, etc.
We've just got time to crowbar in somebody who didn't look quite as great. My favourite story of recent days, this art restoration.
It's just fantastic, isn't it?
By
This
the
was
elderly Spanish
Cecilia Gimenez, an elderly lady down in Spain, who restored a fresco of Jesus in a rather unfortunate manner. The left, here is the before and here is the after. As you will see in the after, it resembles nothing like Jesus Christ at all. And now there is a game online, right, called the Cecilia Prize, named after the rather talentless artist, where you can actually make an attempt yourself to restore Jesus, and perhaps more successfully than Cecilia, or you can kind of do a botch job as she did. So that's the idea. And there are various other renderings of that online. This is Pinterest. You can see people making their efforts there, and that is actually poor old Cecilia, who's become the butt of jokes internationally because of that failed attempt.
James Creedon, I see you giving it a go there. I'm going to go and do the same. Thank you very much for that edition of Media Watch.
Thanks.
Here on France 24, coming up another news bulletin, but first time for Web News' wrap of the week.